Hi, my name is Snow. I'm planning to through hike the Appalachian Trail for 2022. In this video, we're going to talk specifically about what to know before you go for the AT, and then also maybe just planning some things for a through hike. So a little bit of a caveat, I will say that this is kind of things that I put in place that I think are important. Of course, there's a huge variety of other things that you can think of or you need to do, but I think I'm going to try and do it very quickly. I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds, but these are kind of some suggestions, or at least things that I think you need to get ready for. All right, so let's just get into it. So I have just a couple steps that I'm going to talk about specifically, and the first one is really going to be about making your escape. And I love that idea because you're kind of just daydreaming at this point. Maybe you've heard about like the Appalachian Trail, maybe the PCT, maybe even a shorter trail like the Arizona Trail or like the Camino that's in Spain, something kind of really fun and whimsical at this point. And one of the first things I like to think about is actually how that is going to become intangible to tangible. And it really is kind of planning your escape, because some people can just drop certain things and do it in a couple of months. But I think if this is your first time, what you really need to focus on is planning and research. And it's really exciting because it's kind of giving yourself like an end goal of like leading up to that. And it doesn't seem as scary of, oh, I have to get my gear, I have to get the permits, I have to figure out so much stuff. It doesn't seem as like overwhelming. You can give yourself little goals to accomplish along the way. But the first thing I would say is do your research and figure out which trail you want to do. Obviously, we're doing the Appalachian Trail, and each trail is going to be special and unique in its own way, especially to you if this is your first time, your second hike, or maybe you've done shorter hikes and you want to do something longer. It's going to be a journey and a crazy adventure for you. And yeah, it's going to be very exciting. So congratulations if you're already thinking about one. So you choose your trail. I would also say planning for what kind of through hike you want to have. What they usually say is saving about $1,000, and that will cover a bunch of expenses. However, I know people who want to take longer on the trail because they need their bodies to get more accustomed to hiking or figuring out their gear, or they just want to be out there for longer. Kind of think about if you want to be staying in hotels maybe every couple of days, where you're going to get your food, if you're going to eat out a ton, if you're going to go to grocery stores mainly, if you're going to make your own food. This can affect your hike a lot, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's what you want to do and where you feel like you're going to get the most value. There is something so fun about going out and getting a nice meal with a couple other hikers, or going to get those ice creams, or staying in town and getting your laundry done. You just kind of have to weigh your options and just be really honest with yourself. What kind of hike do you want to have? Do you want to be on a string shoe budget? And maybe that's the only hike that you can afford at this time. But money does come into it, and unfortunately a lot of people do have to get off the trail because they need to, or they don't have enough money. So just thinking about that ahead of time. Usually they say about like $1,000. I would give yourself a little bit more of a buffer, especially because when you are thinking about starting your trail, unfortunately, you want to start thinking about coming back and what you're going to do. Are you going to stay with your parents for a little while, or a friend, or a family member? Are you going to come back to a job? Are you going to be looking for some new employment, maybe even a new career? A lot of times this is a very pivotal moment that changes people and changes the way that they look at life. So things may not be the same when you come back, and that's okay. Just kind of give yourself a little bit of a buffer room. That way you're not stressed on trail, because this is exactly what happened to me on the PCT. I went right after Peace Corps, and it helped me figure out a lot of issues. However, I blew the rest of my money, and on trail I kind of had to figure out, what am I going to do? So I decided to stay with my parents afterwards, and I didn't know what I was going to do for work. So it was definitely more stressful than I wanted it to be, but that's just kind of one of the things of an adventure. Sometimes you need to plan for the return as well. So talking about specifically what kind of hike you want to do, and I would say to also give yourself about a year in order to plan this. That way you're able to budget, you're able to save money, and you're able to get all of your affairs in order. So what are we talking about for affairs specifically? We're talking about work, letting your employer know, maybe asking if you can get a sabbatical. You actually would be very surprised, especially right now, if you are in a pretty good company that you like working for, you enjoy your supervisor, your boss, they might be able to give you that time off and able to come back on after that if they support you. Sometimes that won't be the case, and you have to make that choice. And try not to burn bridges as you go. Just say, I have personal goals that I would like to accomplish, and unfortunately at this time in my life, I need to take this time off. So figuring out work stuff, obviously if you are staying in an apartment or your house, you have to figure out if you're going to lease that out what you're going to do with your rent, moving out, what things you're going to get rid of, what things you're going to keep in storage, all those, nitty-gritty details. And giving yourself about a year is going to help make it a lot easier. That way you can start getting rid of things over time. It doesn't have to be this extremely stress-inducing, example. Also insurance. So what are you going to do with your car? Are you going to continue paying your insurance? Are you going to drop it at a family member's house? Are you going to suspend it for a little bit? It depends on what is going to be best for you. And it will be about 6 months that you're going to be away, so it wouldn't be terrible to pay that amount. Maybe this car is going to get other use. You never really know, but it's great to look into that. Also, your medical insurance. If you do leave your job, are you going to do COBRA? What are you going to do to continue your medical insurance? But just figuring out your medical plan, or who is going to be your personal contact if you need that. You will be traveling through different states that maybe you don't have your medical insurance in, so just looking into that. Maybe even travel insurance would be a good option at that point. Doing your research on the trail and on your gear. Giving yourself a year in advance is going to allow you to buy your gear throughout time, so it's not a huge bulk amount of money. And you can also get a ton of sales on REI. I think they do 3 or 4 sales a year. Use Facebook Marketplace, see what gear that you can acquire that's going to work well enough for you and that can just give you the outline of what you're going to need. Obviously, invest in certain pieces, but if this is your first time out there, I would really encourage you to use what you have or ask others maybe if you can borrow their gear. Like I mentioned before, in my first thru hike at the Pacific Crest Trail in 2016, I borrowed a majority of gear from a family member's partner at the time. They had hiked it back in 2009, and I was able to borrow a tent, cookware, trekking poles, sleeping pad, quite a bit of gear. And so that really helped over time for just, keeping my budget kind of small, and I didn't really know what I was doing for the most part, so it was very helpful. Now we're going to talk about step number 2, and this is going to be training. So as you're getting ready to go on this epic hike and this epic adventure, it's important to get not only your mental state ready, but also your physical body ready. And you can do this in a variety of ways. I think it's really exciting to look at books or watch videos and kind of get a feel for it, because it encourages you and it gets you excited for these things to come. It seems like it's something that you're awaiting and you're working towards, and it keeps it in the forefront of your mind. So when you're making decisions about buying things, or maybe going to brunch, or maybe deciding not to do those things because you know that your money is going to go further on the trail, I think that's really important. As for training, there's a variety of things that you can do. I have a couple videos that talk specifically about what I'm doing and also what I did for my thru hike of the Arizona Trail, which did in 2021. And there's really no right or wrong answer. You can do a variety of things. The Stairmaster, you can go to the gym, you can weight train, you can run. It depends on what your specific goals are. What I would recommend though is the best way to get in shape, I mentioned this in one of my last videos, is to hike. To hike a variety of different conditions, a variety of different terrains, steep, flat, carrying weight. Just the more that you can kind of simulate what you're actually going to be doing out there, the better you're going to be. And just to change it up too, it doesn't always have to be a 10-mile hike, but it could be a 3-mile hike with maybe 25 pounds in your pack, just to get your body physically ready for those things. And it's going to help in the long run, just like mentally and physically. Other things that you can do is just looking at books and literature, and of course there's a variety of guidebooks that you can look into. AWOL, I think there's Yogi's Guide for the PCT, and just getting yourself ready for those things. All right, so we talked about planning your escape, we talked about training and getting out there and hiking, and now step 3, we're going to talk about logistics. So this can be really overwhelming to a lot of people, especially if you've never done a long thru hike before, because it's like, okay, where am I going to get my water, or where am I going to get my food, or where am I going to sleep? And I mentioned in the last step that if you get a guidebook, that's really going to help alleviate so much of that, because there is so much information. There's where you can get your water, how far away that is, where the reliable water sources are in, I guess it's Get Out now, Far Out? Get Out's a movie. Far Out, which used to be known as Gut Hooks. You can use those apps and they'll tell you the distance between water sources, a good campsite, towns, what's in the towns overall, and great information that are going to help answer those questions and alleviate it. alleviate those like worries, like a personal like feeling of who's out there on trail and what the resources are. So that's really great. Another thing people talk about is, of course, your budget. Like we mentioned before, how much money are you going to be spending out there? How much money do you want to be saving before then? And then also, how much money do you want to save when you return? And what is your return plan? You also want to think about your start date. What's going to work best for you? Are you going NOBO? Are you going SOBO? Are you doing a section hike? Are you doing a long section hike? I forget what they're called. But what is going to look best for you? And so often a lot of people will compare their hikes to other people's, and you really just have to do what is best for yourself and what's going to work with your schedule. Getting out there for 2 weeks is better than not going at all. And if you can only do that if you have school or work or maybe family commitments, that's still worth it. It's still worth it to go out there and spend that time and achieve these little goals. So start date, we're also talking about transportation to and from. We were just figuring this out, and the guidebooks provide great resources for those who you can ask for shuttle rides and pay them up front or pay them at the trailhead or get a hitch or how that kind of works out. And it's really not as complicated as you think. There are a ton of people willing to help you and who also have a financial business through it. And I kind of think that's really special because I think it's really nice when the trail kind of provides these different kinds of jobs or ways that people can make additional money. We're also going to be talking about resupply, and this depends very much so on you personally. It is, I think, cheaper to buy your food items before and send them to yourself. However, I think there are pros and cons to this, and I kind of go over this in my what to know before you go for my AZT video. But my thought process is I like to plan for maybe the first couple of days and have as much food as I need. So for example, when we are going to be starting the AT, we're going to be going up the approach trail, which I think is a little south of 9 miles. And then it's going to be, I think, 31 miles to the first, to Neal's Gap, I believe. That's going to be about 4 days doing 10-mile days. And I do have a little bit of a reference point on this just because we have hiked before. I think that's definitely doable, and I think it'll be nice to get my body adjusted. I think it'll still be hard because of the steepness of the AT, but definitely doable. So I'm gonna bring that much amount of food, and then from there I'm gonna resupply at Neal's Gap and kind of look forward in my guide when the next resupply is, how many miles, and what resources the next town has. I think there is a really great article through the Trek, and they talk specifically about resupply, where you can do that along the Appalachian Trail, and which ones you probably want to resupply at because maybe there won't be as many options or the food is going to be more expensive. Of course, if you have dietary issues, sending food to yourself is probably going to be a better option because you're going to know exactly what's in your food as opposed to trying to find something that's going to fit into your diet. So it totally depends on what you like overall. I think the least stress for me is I like to do kind of plan as I go. And then also my food likes change. I don't want to have the same thing for the next 6 months. And often I will get sick of food or go in phases with food. Right now I'm in an off stage with peanut butter, so I'm not going to be bringing that, but who knows, maybe I'll come back to it. So I'll leave the Trek article in my description box, so if you want to check that out. This one is specifically for the Appalachian Trail. However, I'm sure they have other ones for the bigger trails like the Pacific Crest Trail or the CDT. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about is permits. And permits are really important, especially if you're going through national parks or areas that have a huge amount of influx. Of course, over the last couple of years, with everything that has gone on with the pandemic, people have been flocking to the outdoors, which is a double-edged sword. It's great to get people out there because, it means that more people want to use these areas and they need to be treated with respect because we want to keep those for future generations. However, they're being loved to death, and right now we don't have the infrastructure to really handle the amount of crowds. As working for the Forest Service and dealing with people who work in recreation, which means the people who normally go around to the campsites and they help the visitors or they're cleaning out certain areas, I've heard firsthand, it's been quite a crazy couple of years with lots of people. So hopefully as we're working to kind of situate that into the future, that we're able to get more people out there and we're able to do it in a safe and sustainable way, that will come to fruition. But for now, permits are really important to do. Just be a good steward of the land. And I would really encourage you just to look into the permits. A lot of people just brush them off, but they're really easy to get. It's supporting a great cause, and it's going to help your experience overall because it helps limit the amount of people that can go in. That way it's not going to be a zoo or a conga line. So specifically for the AT, we're talking about 3 permits. So let me pull those up. So there's 3 permits overall. So the first one is for Smoky Mountain National Park. This is about $20, and you do need to buy it online through recreation.gov. I think there's like certain specifics about it. So I guess when you get it, you have up to 30 days, you need to get it up to 30 days in advance. You have 8 days to get through the Smokies. It just depends on your schedule. So I think what we're planning to do is we're not going to get it before we get on trail. However, I think once we get off at, probably at Franklin, we're going to buy, or we're gonna buy them online, which is just recreation.gov, and then print them out when we go through. There are also specific guidelines that you want to look at for your permit. For the Smokies in general, this is going to be talking about going to different shelters and kind of the etiquette that we need to have as through hikers and compared to like day hikers. So it's important to really look through those instructions in order for everyone to get the most out of these great experiences. So permit number 2 is Shenandoah permit, and this one is really easy to get. You can just get it on trail. You can get permits on each side of the park. You essentially are going to get a tag, and you're going to put that on your bag. You're going to drop half of it and keep half of it. Third permit is Baxter State Park. This one is also on trail, and it's the most controversial. I guess over the last 5-10 years, there's been a huge influx, and specifically with a FKT that happened, I think there was like excess trash that was left. It's having stricter guidelines on how they want through hikers to come through. You need to get this permit in order to summit Katahdin. It's in order for you to go up Hunt Trail, and there are limiting permits. So unfortunately, I think you have to kind of wait to go through and see, but I'm sure that there are other options that you're able to, you could wait a day or 2, or maybe kind of figure out a better system. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm not going to worry about those 2 for the most part. So the biggest one that we're going to worry about right now is the Smokies. So continue with logistics. I'm going to try not to talk too long because I know I've already talked so much. But I would also like to say in the guidebooks and also just watching different people's videos, it's really important to kind of maybe brush up on the etiquette of being a good steward out there and also representing the hiker trash community. Of course, we could be very, hiker trashy, but I would like to always think that we're very giving and we want the best for people, and just kind of having a good attitude, I think, goes a long way. So what I mean specifically about etiquette is sharing common areas like shelters, not talking too loudly if people are trying to go to sleep, being very noticeable about like your lights or maybe music, using like headphones, not trying to just like blast a bunch of music that maybe other people don't like. Just being, common courtesy. I think a lot of people understand that, but I'm sure I've done things at moments where I just like wasn't thinking, and maybe I did something that wouldn't hold up to my ethics overall. And I think just being aware of that is really important. And if this is a new environment or a new space for you, I encourage you to read through the guidebooks. They kind of talk a little bit about this, but even just the online community, without really like hating on people, if you're a new person and you have questions, I think that's totally reasonable, and people shouldn't be shaming you for the things that you don't know, because we don't know until we know. So talking a little bit about the etiquette, of course, like Leave No Trace is really important. The Trek did a great podcast that I really appreciated. I think they came out with it in 2021, and it is with a representative from Leave No Trace, and he just does a great job of embodying what that means, and then also trying to help educate other people around you, and doing it in a very open and I guess like kind way, as opposed to shaming people, which I don't really think you're going to accomplish your goal. So Leave No Trace, of course, for the AT, we're talking about bear hangs and getting used to bear activity, because similar to what we have in California with the Tahoe trash bears, is that bears are less sensitized to humans, and they're going to be looking for those treats and the trash, and you really can't blame them. I mean, if I was a bear, I would be doing the same thing. I would be like, where are the treats? So just taking care of your food and storing it properly is going to go a long way to help mitigate those situations. So doing a bear hang or carrying, I think it's a yursak, which helps. And then I think there's even another thing that you can do for like the smell. You can also have like a bear canister. They have that on the PCT. So I guess going along with that, animal encounters, understand that these are still wild animals. And although, you know, the ponies in Maxi Patch look really cute and fun, they will kick you, and they're wild animals, so treat them with respect. All right, so we're gonna move on to step number 4, and this is to commit to your journey and commit to the unknown. If you've never done a thru hike before, or maybe if you've never gone to this new trail before, there's gonna be a lot that you don't know, and you can only prepare as much as you can. So oftentimes people say we pack a lot of our fears. You know, if we don't want to be cold, if we don't want to be hungry, if we want to make sure that we have something for animals or something for ticks or something for mosquitoes, there are all these different items of gear that you can fit in your bag. However, you might not want to fit in your bag because it's going to be really heavy overall, and you're going to find that maybe these things that scare you up front are not going to be as scary as they are actually in real life. Also with that too is kind of like that unknown is the acknowledgement of it. So understanding that we can't know exactly what's to come. We can only hope for the best, and we can prepare as much as we can. And that's part of the fun too. It's this journey, this adventure overall. So just, I think, reminding myself about that, because even though I have done long distance trails, I've never done this trail before. I've never been on this side of the country hiking up to like 5 or 6 months. And there's a lot of unknowns still. Even hiking with my partner, I've done a bit of like long distance hiking together, but for this amount of time we haven't. And these can be very much like stressors, but it's also reminding myself that it's okay to not know, and that I will discover and I will figure out what to do along the way. So I guess being empowered that you can figure it out. And I would also say to recommit to why you're doing this. And it could be just as simply as, you know, I really want to push myself. I want to try something new. I want to get out of my comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be this crazy huge why. It can just be a dream that you want to accomplish. And just reminding yourself about that, because the prep leading up, about a year, maybe even 2 years, it was 2 years for us going into the Appalachian Trail, but it can be a long time. And oftentimes when situations aren't going the way we want, our faith and our feeling behind those can erode. So I think it's really important to kind of bring that back to the center of your heart and your thoughts, and remind yourself exactly why you want to do this and what you're hoping to accomplish. I kind of mentioned this in the first part, but I would also really recommend making a plan to get back home. So where are you going to stay, where are you going to put your things, and giving yourself time to kind of process your thru hike and everything that happened. It's such a magical, wonderful experience, and it would be a bit of a shame to have to rush back into everything and not get to fully process that. Not to mention, I think it would be hard. So that's just my recommendation. And lastly, number 5 is just do it. So go for it and have the time of your life. It really is such a special experience, and I wish you nothing but the best. I know that these tips or I guess steps seem very simple overall, but believe that you can do it. And people, Shane always says this to me. He said, people who are dumber than us have done it before. Not specifically talking about the Appalachian Trail, but you know, just anything in life, you know, renting an apartment or going abroad or figuring out a phone plan by yourself or a budget or buying a house. Like, people dumber than me have done it before. So I think that helps me feel a little better, and I hope that's not, you know, harmful words overall. But that's everything that I'm going to talk about. I know it was kind of very brief, and I probably jabbered on a little bit, but I hope it's at least a little bit helpful. And a little personally nervous. We leave in about a week, so I'm just trying to get the last things ready for our thru hike and just preparing for this epic adventure that we're going to be on. So that's everything. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your time outside. Have fun out there. Bye.